Good morning, everyone. Yes, welcome back. So, it's this Nigeria Police Bill 2020. Well, it's now an act because you saw the notice yesterday that the president has signed it and sent it back to the clerk of the National Assembly. So, we're just considering some of those now. There's a backstory to it, how it all began, where we are, what do we expect moving forward. Where we do have Senator Haliru Jika, who is the Chairman Senate Committee on Police Affairs. He joins us this morning from our studios in Abuja. Good morning, Senator. Thank you for joining us today. Well,
so good morning, Chamberlain.
All right, so there's a lot of background to this as far back as 2004 when some of these all started, and then it went through several processes. You signed off on some of those proposals as well. So tell us about having signed this bill by the president. If you give us a little bit of a backstory, because there was public hearing as well before getting to this stage.
Thank you very much. You see, the Police Act was a creation of the military in 1943. So there has never been any major repeal up until 2004. And then the recent one of the 2019 by the 9th Senate. It was introduced in the 8th National Assembly, which unfortunately expired with the life of that 8th Assembly. So we now see through our legislative intervention in the 9th National Assembly, we come up with the same bill concurrently in both chambers. That is the House of Representatives and the Senate. I sponsored the version of the Senate, and then my counterpart, the chairman of the House of Representatives, sponsored the one in the House. So we now come up and see where and identify those gray areas, what has not been captured, because our prayer is for us to have a well-refined and a well-behaved Nigerian police that is based on the accountability, transparency, and protection of fundamental freedom of Nigerians. So we come up with that, and now, as you rightly said, it goes through the various legislative stages. It was read on the floor of the Senate and the House of Representatives concurrently for the first time, second time, and it was referred to the floor to the committee. That is the standing committee, that is the Committee on Police Affairs, and then we deliberate as members and invite all critical stakeholders in the internal security architecture of Nigeria to come and have an input so that we can have a society-friendly police in this country. So those areas that we have differences between the House of Representatives and the Senate, we now come in a bicameral legislature, we have what we call a conference. So conference committee was set up by the two presiding officers of the both chambers. That is the Speaker and the Senate President and the President of the Senate. We come up together and identify, for instance, the issue of appointing the Inspector General of Police and the tenure of the Inspector General of Police, which the House proposes 4 years and the Senate proposes 5 years, which we resolve and now agree on 4 years, 4-year terms for the IGP. Then the issue of community policing, we now put a stiffen because the original act, that is the 1943 Act and the 2004 Act, says that the issue of community policing is voluntarily. So we now feel it is necessary that we should give them a stipend, even if it's a fixed amount for all the special constabularies in the Nigerian police. Then the issue of gender discriminality, where a female officer she's the most senior, then they will now go to the next person because he's a man. So we have to stop that in the system. So basically, in isometric view, this is what the bill seeks to achieve. Thank you very much.
Okay. Just one more. There's something Senator mentioned about the appointments, the tenure of the IGP. But I haven't heard him speak about the appointment of the IGP. I know it's one of those things that was also considered. But, you know, one of the concerns over the years has been that if the president is the one that has to appoint the IGP, there's the tendency to be able to control that IGP at any given point in time for whatever whim and caprice the person may have at any time. How does this bill address that?
Yeah, thank you very much. We have a major constraint here. You see, let me correct you, the appointment of Inspector General of Police is not done by the president alone. It's the police council. And the police council comprises of all the state governors of the 36 states of this country and former head of states. In the bill, we're even proposing the presiding officers of the National Assembly to be among those that will be appointing the Inspector General of Police. And to do that, we have to come through a major constitutional amendment, which is currently going on in the National Assembly. Let me give you an example of the name Nigerian Police Force. We have tried in the floor of the Senate and the House of Representatives by way of bill or motion to change the name Nigerian Police. But we cannot do that without amending the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Okay, but I don't know if that really does still answer that question. You talked about the police council, but we all know, and I believe that you may want to address how this new law also addresses that one, that the police council meets whenever the president says that they meet. There is no provision, no constitutional provision as to when they should meet. Does this new law address the timeliness, the frequency of the meeting?
As I said, we cannot do that unless through the through constitutional amendment. There is a committee now in the National Assembly to amend the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That has to be addressed through the amendment of the Constitution. And the president has the powers to decide when the meeting holds. The National Assembly will now say this is how will not say this is how many times the police council will sit. That's an executive threshold to do that. Our own is to make sure that there are laws in place for them to operate.
But it's really interesting because, I mean, it is the president that will recommend the IGP to the police council. It is the president that determines...
President and...
Go ahead.
And other governors and other critical stakeholders.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a resolution. Yeah, it's not whatever the president says on the committee that holds. They have to agree to it, and then before they put a question, and then now approve it.
Now, a couple of issues really for Nigerians. They're thinking, how will this affect the look and feel of the Nigeria police force? I know there's been that back and forth, but I believe this act has put paid to that now, that it's now the Nigeria Police Force, as you said, because that's what the Constitution recognizes. But for the Nigerian out there, they're wondering, so how does this affect the conduct of the average policeman out there? What are the areas in this act, just to give people, benefit of some insight? What are those areas that really touch on the conduct of the Nigeria policeman on the streets?
You may recall that recently the president passed the police trust fund bill. I signed the police trust fund bill into law, which was also passed by this National Assembly. The main objectives of the trust fund is to fund the training, retraining, and state-of-the-art equipment and welfare of the Nigerian men and women in the Nigerian police force. So I think this will go a long way if these funds is used judiciously on training and retraining. I said this earlier in this media, that the major problem of the Nigerian police is funding, and funding. Because I remember way back 2015-16, when I went for an oversight, as a chairman of the House Committee on Police Affairs when I was in the House of Representatives, we went to Plateau State. We went across the country. What we see that goes to the police division monthly as running cost is barely 35,000 naira. That cannot even buy stationaries, talk less of fueling patrol vehicles and other things. So they largely rely on the support they got from the executive arm of the government. That is the local government chairman or the state governor. So what this administration did is to increase the amount of funding in the Nigerian police. And now let me give you an example of this, what is happening now in the country, the security trend that is happening in the country. The police overhead is barely 1.4 billion naira, 1.5 billion naira. And there are a lot of operations going on. When you look at the military, the Operation Lafia Dole, the funding of Operation Lafia Dole is about 100 billion naira annually. Police have more operations, more men on the ground. The aim of the Operation Lafia Dole is to recapture those areas that was taken by the insurgents. And now, if they have done that, it's left for the police now to go back and restore civil order there and relocate those people there. So if the police are handicapped, how can they do that? So I think the issue of the Nigerian police is funding, and funding.
Sounds to me as though you think, you're saying that, I mean, throwing money at the police in court, pardon the use of that expression, solves all the problems. So are you saying that the reason we have human rights violations, as reported, is because of funding? The issue of extrajudicial killing. I mean, you said the issue is funding. So how will that resolve those issues of human rights violations and all that? Go on, please.
What I mean is this. When you don't have a properly trained police, so what do you expect? That is why I said with the funding, we can now train them, because only God knows the kind of characters we're injecting into the system. Because when they receive the first training, and that's it. But if they are being trained constantly and we build a thorough and a well-behaved police that knows this job, we won't have this problem. So what in the essence is this: mostly when they give them the first training and then they recruit them into the Nigerian police force, that is the end. They just forget about them. They allow them to continue on going on with their own normal business. So when you don't retrain them constantly, this kind of thing is bound to happen.
Well, I see that there's a lot of focus on the operations of the police, and then you talk about welfare, the funding part of it. But some of the issues you mentioned earlier about the tenure of the IGP, I mean, what happens if the person who is appointed as IGP has got 2 years to retirement? That wouldn't be an issue, would it?
Yeah, I don't know, because the civil service, the police force is being guided by the civil service rule. So I think maybe in the case of this 4 years, they will have to shop for an officer who have 4 years remaining in the service or more to fill or to occupy the office of the IGP. I think that will solve the problem.
Because that could be a challenge. If he's the next qualified person to become the IGP and he's got 2 years to retirement and the law says the tenure is 4 years, wouldn't they feel hard done by if you meet that person and get the next person? That would breed some bad blood, don't you think?
Yeah, if you remember, during the appointment of the IGP Ibrahim Idris from Niger State, about 27 AIGs and DIGs were retired. This is not new in the system. That's how it has been operating. So I think this will not be a different.
Yeah, but I thought that these are part of the injustices, quote unquote, or anomalies that needed to be corrected, you know, making some of these laws so that people don't think that they get to a certain position, they can't give their best anymore, and then they're eased out of the system.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that because I think there are some executive powers attached to that, which maybe the president may decide. I'm not a lawyer, so let me not delve into something that I have no idea. But I believe the president may have the power, because it's a paramilitary setting, so to maybe extend or decide how it goes.
There are some other issues that will...
Maybe through the...
Go ahead, complete your thoughts, please.
Excuse me? Maybe but in conjunction, in collaboration with the Attorney General of the Federation, who will interpret the Civil Service Act or the law.
Let's turn to Mr. Chukwuma, Innocent Chukwuma, because, I mean, they were part of the people who brought in the one for 2004, you know, and we built on it moving forward. He joins us via Zoom. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Well, having gotten to this stage, and, you know, from what you've heard senators speak about some of the provisions that eventually scaled through. Are you satisfied that this act will address some of the fundamental issues that the country had raised about policing?
Let me begin by saying that it is a welcome development, and one does not expect one particular amendment to address anomalies that have been in existence for the past 77 years that we've been using the 1943 Police Act. There are certain sections in it that are welcome and would aid improvement in performance of the police. There were some sections that were rejected from the bill, which we hope in other amendments that will come in the future will be addressed. But I also have to, place my comments with a caveat that I have not actually seen the signed copy from the president. And in the light of the controversies around the Company and Allied Matters Act, that should be on the line. So for me, when we started this process in November 2004 about amending the then 1943 Police Act, we had 5 areas of challenge with that act. One is that it has what we describe as insufficient articulation of the mission of the police in a democratic setting. So if you look at the then Section 4, it talks about what the police are employed to do to prevent and detect crime, and was very silent on fundamental rights. And we thought that in a democracy, there is need for a delicate balance between public security and individual liberties. Now, in the new act, it was addressed, because right after the whole role of preventing and detecting crime is the need to protect and respect fundamental freedom. There's also the issue of scattered provision in different acts. If you look at in the UK, where they have the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, you have in one body of law a comprehensive provision about the powers and what the police are supposed to do. In our own situation, that was not the case. So in this new act, there was an attempt to link it with the Administration of Criminal Justice Act of 2015 and make the two laws as a continuum and reinforces one another. There was also the issue that much is left to discretion in policing. If you look at the former Police Act, a lot of powers of arrest, search and detention were left loose. But in this particular act, there have been attempts to ensure what the limits of those powers are. Some of these include that police shall not arrest somebody on the basis of civil wrong or breach of contract. A suspect or defender may not be handcuffed, bound, or subjected. There's reasonable suspicion. You have all along provisions that we thought, if adequately enforced, will help in addressing issues around fundamental rights. But as we were saying earlier, the whole issue around appointment of the IG, they addressed the one of security of tenure, and I welcome the provision that once appointed, an IG stays in office for 4 years, which is a reasonable period of time for the person to develop his or her agenda and try to implement it. But the appointment process is still left to the president. The president begins and completes it without reference to the National Assembly or even some kind of public hearing, so that members of the public who have interacted with the particular persons will come and testify as to their integrity. There was also the provision that the person should hold a minimum of first degree. This was rejected in the new act. So you can
just one moment. You said something about the appointment before you move off of it. Senator, you can say the other time that the appointment of the IGP is not something he does solo, that he has to do it in consonance with the police council.
Yes, it's an advisory role. So this is actually not a new provision. In the former Police Act, the police council is there for the president to consult and be advised by them. But the practice is that IGs are appointed and removed without recourse to the police council. And even if you have police council in section, what role they have is advisory, which the president can accept or reject. So that is still does not meet the requirement of having the public play a role in the appointment of an important position such as the chief of police, which should be differentiated from the military service chiefs. This is a civilian organization. The police is a public police. It is not in the category of military services. So whoever comes or gets appointed, members of the public should have a framework of making inputs and testifying as to the integrity of the person before the person is confirmed.
Well, let's get back to Senator. How much involvement did the police have while this went on before it was signed in?
Yeah, as I told you, through our legislative intervention, when the bill came to the National Assembly, we invited all critical stakeholders, that includes the Nigerian police, for their input. And then the public also and other private individuals and sectors to come and have their input because, as I said earlier, we want to have a well-refined and well-behaved Nigerian police that is society-friendly. So that has been captured adequately. And the police were fully involved in the whole process from start to finish.
Well, it means that there's going to be a lot of training, because if it's the same police personnel who are not going to be sacked, but will have to bank on huge training for that to happen. But, you know, yes, the part of community policing. Now, we saw when the government signed off and then released some funds, or approved some funds for community policing, you saw the reaction of the country. Many still kept on saying, it's not really about some of those issues. It's about the structure of the police, how the people want to own the police. Now, in consideration of some of these views that people had, do you think this Police Act actually addresses those concerns that Nigerians have about, I mean, they talk about state police, for instance?
Yes. As I said earlier, this act captured the issue of community policing adequately. The whole concept of the community policing came up when the police feel the need to involve, that is the citizen, in policing. So when you go through the act, you will see that the police commissioner of a state is the chairman of that board, and in collaboration with the local communities there, be it a district head, a village head, a chief, or critical stakeholder there in the state. And it goes down to the local government and to the ward level. And it has adequately captured, it has been adequately captured in this act.
Right. Because there's still a lot of questions as to this special constabulary. Yes, this act has given it a green light. Well, eventually when we see, we'll confirm if that is indeed the case. But you know that there are arrangements across states right now as it stands. And one wonders, where does that leave that arrangement that states have made? Does this act factor that in? Does it talk about collaboration? Because they say they want to collaborate with the police. But does this act speak about that?
Yes, it does. Because, as I said, we even go to the extent of looking at the provision and now insert a clause that would provide an allowance from them for them from the Federation account, so which is going to be shouldered by the Nigerian police. So that means the police will be fully responsible for that special constabularies, and they will be supervising whatever they do, and because they will be getting source of information from the grassroots, and then to the police authority for necessary action.
So just to be clear, for example, Amotekun, you're saying that this new act factors in Amotekun and says, well, there will be a collaboration with Amotekun. Is that what you're implying?
Yes, Amotekun is another form of community policing. There's nothing wrong with that. So they're all going to be captured, like what we have in the north here, the Hisba in Kano, and other local vigilante groups. They are all other forms of community policing. You may recall in the 8th Assembly, I also sponsor a bill for the establishment of the Vigilante Group of Nigeria, VGN, which will be supervised by the police for 5 years, after which they will be on their own. But unfortunately, the bill was not assented to. So it's the same people or the same organizations that will now be injected into the community policing system in Nigeria.
Is this recommendation, what you're saying now about this community policing, is this in tandem with the new insertion in Section 12, where you said that the Police Service Commission shall appoint such other persons to offices in the police force as are required for the effective and efficient performance of the functions of the police? Is that what this section is about?
I don't think so. I don't have the copy of the bill with me here, but as I told you, there are about 27 or 28 clauses that differs the House and the Senate, which we were able to resolve through conference. So I'm yet to see the clean and the final bill from the Clerk of the National Assembly. But all those things, all those areas have been adequately addressed in the bill.
All right, Mr. Chukuma, could you go ahead and speak to us? Because, I mean, we've seen the reaction that Nigerians had about community policing. Some thought, oh, wait a minute, that's not really what we want. So there are those who were thinking, should they have hung on just a little while longer and accommodate some of these other areas? Because some still think that the funding and then the structure of the police, there are still question marks as to how they will function to the acceptance of Nigerians.
Great. Again, I have to emphasize that I've not seen the signed copy. So there is the Senate version, the report from the Senate, and then when they went into harmonization with the House, leading to the 28 clauses that needed to be harmonized. So again, until we see the version the President signed and analyzed it, we cannot say with certainty what is in the new act and what is not there. But if one relies on the Senate version, Section 115 to Section 118 covers the whole issue around community policing. Although I must caution that it's actually a watered version of community policing that we're talking about here, because it dealt specifically with the appointment of community policing committees at the state and local level, and perhaps at the federal level, where it says that it should comprise of police officers and people appointed from the community and restricted to helping the police to promote partnership with the community, promote communication, cooperation, improve services, transparency, and accountability. But if we want to look at the classical understanding of the concept of community policing, which is a philosophy and strategy that should permeate and pervade the entire Nigerian police force and should inform decentralization of power so that every police officer on the beat out there feels that he or she is empowered to engage communities and find solutions to their problems. If you're looking at it that way, I must tell you that community policing is yet to be fully addressed here. So what we have here is at best an improvement of the police community relations committee that we all are used to. So that's what I would say by that. And then when I started, I was speaking about 5 areas that we had challenges with the old Nigerian Police Act. I spoke about 3. 5 out of those 5, only 3 were addressed, which is the mission, the scatter provision, and policing discretion that were tried to constrain under this new act. But the whole area of the ineffective and inefficient organization of the police, talking about the centralization of powers, too many activities begin and end at the force headquarters, including control of the funds. They were not really addressed in this this new act.
What we will do, gentlemen, yeah, we'll still have a lot of grounds to cover, but we'll do that at a later date so that we can, look at some of those other clauses that people still have questions about. But we thank both of you, Innocent Chukwuma, Regional Director, West Africa, Ford Foundation, as well as Senator Hale Rujika, Chairman, Senate Committee on Police Affairs. We do thank you for your time this morning.